Welcome to the Over 40 Alpha Podcast with your host, Funk Roberts.
All right, so welcome everybody again. And this coaching call today, we're going to talk about resistance bands, Bandology 101. The reason why we're going to talk about bands is a few reasons. Number one, a new program is coming out later next week. It's my Alpha Band Warrior Fit program. It's a brand new band training, functional training using 6 bands because I'm adding 3 more funk bands to the family. So now there's 6 bands to the family. And the new bands that are coming, they seem to be they're on their way. FedEx says that it'll be at the manufacturing warehouse that we have in Utah, June 18th, which means June 20th. I always give a couple days because all the guys at the warehouse, they have to get it from the box. They got to open them up. They got to put them in the right place. So that takes a little bit of time. But that being said, we're still going to pre-launch the Alpha Band Warrior Fit program. You're going to have the ability to get the program and the 6 bands. And I always tell people you should always have 2 sets of bands, like 2 sets of orange, 2 sets of red, 2 sets of yellow, because there's so many different reasons why. But having 2 sets is key because not only is this new 28-day program coming, but also my Alpha Band Warrior Academy is coming, which will be 12 phases of band training. And today we're going to talk about why why band training's beneficial specifically for us as we get older. So let's dive in. As we get older, obviously maintaining our strength and flexibility isn't as easy as it used to be, right? And we know that. And that's where adding an implement like band training and resistance bands is great. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not advocating for only training with bands, right? Like what you're going to learn, and if you have used resistance bands in the past, you know that bands bring a different type of resistance, a different type of element to training. What up, Vincent? What up, Rondon? Right? It's a totally different type of resistance that is extremely beneficial for us as we get older. Extremely beneficial when it comes to functional training, when it comes to fundamental movement patterns, when it comes to athletic training. Like bands are absolutely amazing. And, a lot of times when you're online, like social media, all you see are people using bands for like mobility, or they're using bands for therapy, or they're using bands for warm-ups, right? Stretching, which is great, 100%. That's another reason why bands are so versatile and so awesome. But you don't see a lot of people using bands for really and truly what their power comes for, like the power of bands, which is, building muscle, increasing strength, power, explosiveness, functional training. And so these, simple, but the different type of equipment will help you revolutionize your workout. Again, there are some people who only train with bands. And again, I do say that you can just literally from today till the day you die, still train with bands and only train with bands and still be able to build muscle, burn fat, get into incredible shape, health, fitness, the same, even maybe a little bit better than someone who only trains with dumbbells, right? Because again, the versatility of bands and what you can do. What up, Michael? What up, Andre? So let's dive in because now you can add all of them at once. You can do body weight, you can do bands, you can do kettlebell, you can do dumbbells, all in either the same workouts or, okay, you know what? I'm going to train with kettlebells for a bit. Then I'm going to train with dumbbells for a bit. Now I'm going to train with bands. And you're going to see that, after you train with bands, going back to kettlebell training, it's going to be a little bit different, right? You're going to be able to do things a lot better, range of motion, etc. Because the bands offer a variable resistance that as you stretch them, right, you're going to make your muscles work harder throughout an entire range of motion. Okay, so and we'll get a little bit deeper into that. But in general, the versatility, the portability, right? If you're traveling, being able to bring bands. Like I'm going to be at the cottage for 2 weeks. Of course, I'm bringing bands. Angela, she's going to bring kettlebells. I'm bringing the bands, right? And the ability for us to to use them anywhere, pretty much anywhere, anytime, whether it's attachment-free training or band attachment training. Either way, you can use them anywhere, anytime, and they're easier on the joints. I'm telling you right now, like my shoulder mobility, my shoulder stability, and my joint, like lack of joint pain or you know what I mean, has been apparent over the last 2 months because I'm able to use the bands in specific ways that I would never be able to do with kettlebells or dumbbells or body weight, like at all. And so that allows me to be able to work more with building more stability and mobility with resistance that I could never do without. Okay, and again, building muscle, improving flexibility, preventing injuries, building strength, all important as we age. So let's dive in. And let's understand again band resistance, right? What is band resistance? When you start stretching this band, I'm gonna pull this out so you can see. If you're just listening to this, you're probably not gonna be able to see it. But when you first start stretching the band, depending on the band implement, this is what I call my strength band. We got different bands here. Let me get a lighter one just so we can see. This is the newer one, by the way. This one, by the way, just as a side note, is the reason why you need to get more bands, because this band here, what up, Kevin? What up, Claude? This one is the most versatile band I've ever used. You can use this for so many different things. But again, when you first start stretching this band, the beginning it's pretty easy, but the further you get, the harder it is, right? And that's how resistance bands work. They're tougher the more you pull them, the more you stretch them away from the base. And that's called ascending force curve, right? Now, if you think of a weight, like a dumbbell, the dumbbell, the actual weight of the dumbbell is constant. No matter whether I'm holding the dumbbell here or holding a dumbbell out here, the resistance doesn't change. The resistance is still the same. It's still the same 5-pound dumbbell, right? Obviously, it's harder to move the dumbbell when it's further away from your core, like from the middle of your body. The closer things are to the middle of your body, the easier it is to move around. The further away, it's more difficult, but this is still 5 pounds. Whereas with resistance bands, the further away I go, the more resistance it is, the tougher it is to hold it out at that. You can tell it's easier here. It's like 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound, 4 pound, 5 pound, 6 pound, 7 pound, what have you. Now I'm out here, it's a lot. The resistance is heavier, harder. So constant force is with a dumbbell or a weight, like a dumbbell. Ascending force is what's happening when you're using bands. The further away you get from the center or where you're starting that pulling or pulling motion, the tougher it's going to be. And so that's why I love bands, because again, it gets harder. So the more you stretch that band, the harder it makes your muscles work. So your muscles are working more. More muscles are getting used, right? More muscles have to come into play in order to hold that band, hold that resistance, depending on where you're moving it or where that resistance is. But again, as I mentioned before, the great thing about band training is a lot gentler on your joints, right? It's easier on the joints. Not saying it's easier to lift or it's easier to move with the bands or to create a movement, because it is much more difficult because you're not used to having this constant resistance on your body. So you have to work a lot harder in order to stay stable. You have to work a lot harder in order to control the band, which all of these little stabilizing muscles that don't generally get used when we're doing the same movement pattern with a dumbbell. So for instance, if I'm doing side lateral raises with a dumbbell, right now it's like, okay, this is good, not bad. It's pretty easy, right? Side lateral raises. But now when I use the resistance band, right? Because again, At the top of the movement, that's where it's going to be the hardest, right? With a dumbbell, it's going to be hard here. But as I come down, it's going to be much easier, right? Less muscles are going to be engaged, right? The engagement happens when I'm raising through the shoulders, and then as I'm coming down, you're not going to get much muscle recruitment with the dumbbell. But if I use a resistance band, where's that yellow? There it is. If I use this yellow resistance band, for instance, depending on where I step on it, right now it's a lot more difficult. This is the lightest band because now my shoulder is still the muscles in my shoulder are still getting worked as I'm in the eccentric, like bringing this band down, eccentric movement pattern, because I have to control the band. There's still resistance on that band. And so again, weights always feel the same weight. That it's the heaviness of the weight is the same, but with bands, things get tougher. They start easy, they get tougher, and again, depending on the movement, you're still going to be implementing, or muscles will still be used as you're moving through that movement, which is amazing because again, you're feeling something totally different. Forces you to really become stable. So it's the variable resistance of bands that make these amazing, right? Because as the tension increases and the band stretches, more muscle engagement needs to happen throughout the entire range of motion, where usually that doesn't happen because with traditional weights like barbells and dumbbells, yes, they offer constant resistance, but again, the force will remain the same regardless of the position, which means the weight remains the same. Okay. So that continuous tension enhances muscle activation, right? Breaks down more muscle fibers, which again potentially will allow us to build more muscle. But it also helps with endurance, muscle endurance, strength endurance, right? I call strength endurance like all time, like what I used to call it. I used to call it like all time strength. So for instance, whenever I'm going to keep going back to when I was training athletes and fighters specifically, anytime strength is what I call it. So anytime strength. So in the first round of a let's say MMA fight, right? Like a MMA fight, that's when you're the freshest, right? You're fresh, you have the most strength, you have the most muscle endurance. But as the fight goes on, right? Round number one, later in round number two, later round number one, round number two starts. Your strength is starting to dissipate a little bit, right? You're not as explosive as you are when you were first started. And then in round three or round four, or round five, depending on what fight it is, that's really when you have to tap into what I call anytime strength, all time, anytime strength. You have to be as strong later in a fight than you are in the beginning of the fight. So you have to be able to build anytime strength, which to me is strength endurance. Being able to tap into that strength later on in the fight when someone's trying to, when you need a takedown, when you need to get somebody and take them down, pick them up and throw them down. You want to have that anytime strength. And so that's more strength endurance training where you want to continuously build strength. That's why like wrestlers have that type of strength, right? The conditioning that wrestlers have and the training that they do, that obviously the technique, but the training that they do trains them for that anytime strength. So later on in a match, they can still take somebody down. They can still, fight off someone taking them down depending on the type of wrestling. And so resistance band training allows you to build that anytime strength, that strength endurance, that when most people are fatigued or, when you're training and you're, later on in your training, you still want to be able to increase and improve your strength. Resistance bands, that continuous tension will help with that. And here's another thing that I love, and this is what I was kind of talking about when we started, was that versatility in the angles. So for instance, with resistance bands, I can train at different angles. Like, so for instance, let's say I'm doing I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it here because I'm sitting down and you'll be able to see, but like, I won't be able to do it. But like with bands, because of the way the bands are set up, because they're 41 inches in circumference here, I can push against the band at an angle, right? At different angles. So whether I want to do a straight up shoulder press, whether I want to press out, whether I want to press with a little bit of an angle, whether I want to press straight out. Like there's so many different ways and versatility and directions that I can use that mimic real life movements, right? That mimic real life. Like it's very difficult for me to take a 5 pound weight and press it out, without injuring myself, right? Because with bands, there's that little bit more of a control because it's constant. Like the resistance is always going to be there, so I can push against something and still know that like I'm not going to just all of a sudden collapse, right? Of course, I have to push against the band to keep that resistance, but the angles and the directions that you can use training with bands allow for way better functional training, way better training to mimic everyday movements, right? And again, I go back to training fighters, right? I go back to like I think like I kind of look at training like fighters and training us for like everyday functional everyday movements is almost like the same thing, because when you're training a fighter, you're not training in the same plane of motion that you would generally do in other sports. Because in a grappling match, you don't like you're not going to be pushing people straight horizontal or pulling people or vertically or pulling people horizontally in a perfect line. Sometimes someone's doing something, you got to push them off at this angle, so you have to have strength at a specific angle, which it could be the same as if you're picking up your child. You don't know what your a young kid or your grandchild is going to do. They're going to be moving all over the place, and so you're not picking someone up like this or moving them like this. Sometimes it's like, oh God, I gotta, Jesus Christ, and now it's like you're at an angle that you generally don't train. That makes sense. So what and same with fighters. Like you're not when I used to train fighters, I'm not literally doing like specific movements vertically and horizontally. Sometimes I'll have them do a movement that would technically not be the technique of that's really bad technique. It's like, well, yeah, but in a fight, man, you have to be able to hold something in a weird way, which is why I like using kettlebells, because that gives you a different, weight distribution. But I'm getting off topic here. I'm nerding out and geeking out on you right now. But basically, what I'm saying is, this transfers over to us. Like again, our everyday life. Like if you work in a factory, or you do something where or if you deliver for like UPS or whatever, and you're lifting boxes and moving things all over the place, like honestly, you're not always moving things up and down. If you are a first responder, like if you're a police officer or a firefighter, or you're in the military, you ain't doing things straight up and down. If you're trying to fight off somebody, they're not going to be, you're going to have to pull them in or hold them at really weird angles that when you're training, the functional training, that transition over to everyday movement patterns that we're not generally training, bench press, bicep curls. Like that's why I kind of, there's more to training for us as we get older, because we need to train our bodies and our muscles and our movements in these ways, because that's how we're going to be moving around as we get older. And as we're fighting sarcopenia and fighting all of these things, it's even more important because we're more susceptible to injuries, right? Back injuries, knee injuries. So being able to train functionally and the versatility of the angle of resistance bands are absolutely incredible. And of course, they're joint friendly. Like that is something that I'm going to continuously bring up as well, because as we get older, our joints aren't as strong. So we want to make sure that we can still build muscle, build strength, and build that anytime strength, build that anytime muscle, get extremely strong without destroying our joints, without having to lift heavy all the time and just literally causing arthritis on our joints or just destroying our joints. A lot of us at our age, based on what we did in the past, our joints are beat up, right? Some of us have had surgeries. Some of us have played sports where, some of us have just worked in a place where you're doing the same movement over and over again. And that eats away at our joint health. So being able to still build muscle, to still get strong and explosive using something that's not going to overload our joints. Again, I'm not saying that dumbbells and kettlebells and all those things are going to just destroy our joints. Don't get me wrong, right? Because we're also building joint strength and joint health. But that is the benefit of using resistance bands, is it's not just a rehab thing. It's, oh man, I can develop all of this functional strength. I can build muscle. I can do all of these things and still ensure that I have more joint health than I would using other tools. If that makes sense. All right, so let's go to body weight, right? So we talked about the difference between bands and dumbbells, but what are the differences between bands and body weight, right? Because for me, my number one thing is you need to master your movements using your body weight first. Like if you can't do push-ups properly, then it's going to be very, 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 very difficult for you to do any other type of pushing movement without injury, without setting yourself up for not having the technique, right? Without understanding the movements of your body. If you can't do a squat properly, how are you going to load your body with weight if you can't even do a body weight squat or a body weight lunge? So there are specific movements and why body weight is such an integral piece of this programming and my programming, because we need to master movements. Once we start, mastering a movement with our body weight, then we can start to progressively overload with weight or with movements or what have you. Bands, on the other hand, so once we get to once we get to a point where we're mastering the movement with body weights, and we can do body weight squats, prisoner body weight squats, we can do jump squats, we can do all of these type of squats. Okay, now then our body's going to hit a plateau. It's going to adapt. It's going to be, okay, hey, Funkster, I need a little bit more resistance for this exercise. All right, listen, we've overdone it with the body weight squats. But yes, you can do 1,000,000 body weight squats, great, but it's time to overload this. It's time to add some load, and that load can be a kettlebell. The load could be a weight vest. The load could be dumbbells, or the load can be now using resistance bands, right? Adding resistance bands to body weight exercises make it more challenging, big time, because now the resistance is through the entire squat movement and not just the concentric movement from the lower part of the squat to pushing yourself up, using the muscles to get you to the top of the movement. Now, because the bands are around you, you have to fight the bands trying to compress you the entire time while performing the squat exercise. So again, it's not just the muscles that are used in the traditional squat, body weight squat, but now everything's getting used. It's more of a total body exercise because all of these other muscles are being recruited to keep you stable throughout that movement. And then we have kettlebells. Again, love kettlebells, and kettlebells offer a dynamic resistance. And because using kettlebells in the way that I use kettlebells, hardstyle kettlebell training, you have to stabilize, engage your entire body and all of your muscles during specific movements, because you're trying to build functional strength, and you're trying to build power, and you're trying to build explosive power. You're trying to grind in some exercises so you have that eccentric, strong muscle endurance with specific exercises. But adding bands can complement kettlebell training. So for instance, Angela, she uses bands with her kettlebell training, specifically with her swings, right? Because that now you get an even more powerful stimulus when you add or put a band on your kettlebell and then perform swings with the same weight. So you can now, it gives you a way to progressively overload using the same weight by adding resistance bands. You can actually add resistance bands to dumbbell training. So if you're doing dumbbell curls, for instance, and you've mastered the dumbbell curl, Because again, you find that when you're using resistance bands, you really have to focus on your stability. You really have to focus on that mind movement connection. Oh shit! Like I'm all, oh, I can't even, like I'm trying to do a dumbbell curl, and now my elbow's all over the place because I've got this resistance that's constant. The resistance is always there. But from the bottom, as soon as I start that movement of a bicep curl, right? Now I'm fighting the resistance band pulling the dumbbell down, because you can put the band right on the dumbbell, and now you're doing more of a curl, and that curl is going to be much slower. You're going to implement more muscles. You're going to stimulate more muscle, and you have to control the movement all the way up. But you can't do that unless you know exactly how to do technically right bicep curls, because if you don't and you add this resistance band, it's going to be a disaster. And yes, that's when you're going to get that joint pain. That's when you're going to get injuries, because nothing trumps mastering a movement. Nothing trumps it, right? You have to master the movements, the technique with any exercise you do. So bands are beneficial because you can progressively overload with the resistance, right? It's very easy to, you got these bands, you got this, you got this, you got the black bands. With these, come on, man. Come on. Bear with me for 2 seconds, please, and thank you. All right. With these fixed bands, you have different resistance that you can quickly, use. You can double bands up. You can, use specific bands for specific movements. And you can maximize the muscle activation using the different bands, right? Functional strength, again, because the way bands are set up, you can move in different planes, right? Multiple planes, multiple directions, again, which is going to be crucial for daily activities, crucial for athletic performance. And when I say athletic performance, I'm talking like in the gym, outside of the gym, running around with your kids, running around with your grandchildren, hiking. Like, those to me are athletic movements. It doesn't have to be a sport in order to move athletically, right? We don't have to be in a sport to move athletically. Injury prevention, right? The risks of injury, reducing injury, is definitely increased, right? You're going to reduce injury using bands, because the fact that it's not a weight. It's not a weight that sometimes is very difficult for people to use. Yes, you have to like when you're using bands, it's going to help you improve your joint stability. It's going to help you improve your muscle balance. Like, it's going to help you improve your muscle. It's going to help your balance, your stability, your mobility. And of course, depending on the type of exercise and the type of workouts, you're going to get a little bit more muscular balance in your body, so that you reduce the chances of injury. Because again, most of us coming into our 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, we always have this. We're in balance. I mean, I'm saying probably everybody, because we do one thing more than the other, or we may have got an injury that forced another part of our, another muscle or another group of muscles to work harder or work more than they're used to working. So now we get that imbalance, right? If we get a knee injury or whatever, people start walking weird. And then if they've had that injury long enough without being treated, now you got that Trellenberg effect where you're walking all messed up, right? And so we want to maximize muscle activation using bands. We want to enhance our functional training using bands. We want to create better joint-friendly workouts with bands. And then we can also complement all of these other modalities, right? We can complement weights by using bands. We can complement kettlebell training by using bands. We can enhance our body weight exercises using bands. So again, the benefits of band training are incredible, right? And a lot of times people don't understand it, because every time that you may go online, even me, like every time I go online, it's like somebody showing me a freaking mobility, prehab, rehab, thing with the band. And I'm like, okay, guys, come on. And there's way more to band training that's like, let's go. So, this new program that I'm coming out with is called Alpha Band Warrior Fit. And the focus of this program is functional training, right? Because functional training uses those fundamental movement patterns, right? That are the natural movements that we do every day, right? Lunge, squat, push, both vertically and horizontal, pull, both vertically and horizontal, hip hinge, right? So hinging at the hip instead of bending over. Our core, so core stability, core strength, anti-rotation and rotation, so being able to rotate through the core, through your trunk. Walking and locomotion, so just literally walking, that's a functional movement pattern. It's a fundamental movement pattern. Like there's 6 core ones, which I just explained to you: lunge, squat, push, pull, hip hinge, and core. Those are the 6 fundamental movement patterns. Again, some people are going, there's 7. You didn't add this. So I add another 4. 6, but then I can add 4 more, which to me are the walking, locomotion, running, plyometrics, power, and cardio. I kind of throw them all in together because you can use a plyo power movement and a cardio movement all in the same way. Animal movements and mobility. So a lot of that animal training, kickouts, mobility movements, and then balance and stability, right? One-legged stuff, balance, stability. So all of those things are fundamental movements that we do on a daily basis in some way, or should be doing, because we do lose the ability to run. We do lose the ability to jump and land properly. So we've got to continuously build that up through functional training, because as we age, we do have the decrease in muscle, right? Mass, right? Sarcopenia, natural loss of muscle due to aging, starts at 35. So we have to continuously be building muscle. It's not one of those things where, okay, I just built muscle and I stop. No, this is from now to the end of life, because sarcopenia is in the corner waiting for you to drop the ball at any time. And as we get older, it only accelerates. And muscle is the longevity organ. It's the most important organ. It helps us stay metabolically healthy. So we've got to be building muscle, period. Like that's not even a debate. Like there should be no debate and there should be no debate anywhere that it's a muscle that we should be focusing on. Not stepping on stage bodybuilding muscle, but we need to be building muscle. But also the other challenges that happen are joint stiffness, right? Our joints start to get stiff. Our muscle gets more sore because we're not used to training in specific ways. Our coordination goes out the window, right? Our fast twitch muscle fibers, the ability to have power, explosiveness, just regular balance issues, right? They're all deteriorating as we age if we're not focusing on building those things. They're going to decline. And then that means when those things decline, our everyday tasks decline and the risk of injury increases, right? It sucks not being able to do certain things as you get older and then blaming it on age, when generally you should be blaming on the lack of training, the lack of focus on building these movements, building these muscles, building specific strength, mastering movements, coordination. So functional training helps with all of that, not only with what I just talked about, but it is going to improve your strength. It is going to improve your coordination. You're going to build muscle, burn fat, and improve strength and transform your body with functional training. Because even though we're focusing more on movements, hey, there's muscles in those movements that we are targeting. So that Alpha Warrior Fit program is more based on functional training, core stability, right? The importance of our trunk, right? What's the importance of the trunk? Why do you always hear about, oh yeah, my core's, my core's weak. I gotta work on my core. I gotta do more planks. That's what I gotta do, more planks. No, you gotta do way more than just planks, man. It's anti-rotation, it's rotation, it's anti-side lateral flexion, it's anti-flexion, anti-extension, it's stability, it's core strength, it's everything. It's not just planks, right? So because our trunk or core, which generally is from under under your armpits all the way down to your pelvic floor, right? And both sides. That's generally your core. That's your trunk. That's our body's central pillar. That's really and truly what keeps us stable and what supports all of our movements. So if we don't have strong core, then our posture starts to diminish, right? Increase risks of injury, right? And our everyday performance, everyday activities, just they come with more. You got to do more work, right? And you're afraid to do certain things, afraid to move. There's so many times when you get injured. If you've ever been injured, probably most of you guys have. How demeaning, not demeaning, that's the word, but how emasculating is it when you're coming off of an injury or you're recovering or you're in therapy, whatever. How emasculating is it not to be able to do certain things? It's like, fuck, I can't even walk up the goddamn stairs without this hurting. I can't even do this movement without this hurting. I'm actually afraid to do this because if I do, I know it's going to hurt. That's so emasculating. When you see other people, you see an old woman walking down the street. How come she can do this? She's skipping? What's happening here? What's wrong with me? Right? It sucks. It's horrible. Yes, it is horrible. It is so horrible. He's like, God damn it. But that should spark something. It's like, okay, I can't live my life like this. I cannot live my life for the rest of my life. Because the worse that gets, then you know what happens after that? The cane comes out. And you know what happens after the cane? The walker comes out. And you know what happens after the walker? The wheelchair comes out. And, oh no, sorry, let me back up. No. Let me back up. It goes cane. Then it goes walker. Then it goes 9 volt, right? You know what the 9 volts are, right? And then goes wheelchair because you got to be able to get up into the 9 volt. I call those 9 volts in order to move around. You don't want any of that stuff. No matter how old you are. You want to go out on your shield, not on we're using a walker. So strengthening your core is going to enhance your balance. It's going to enhance your coordination, and it's going to help you with lifting and bending and twisting because our core supports our spine and it reduces lower back pain, right? That a lot of us get. So core strength, focusing on the trunk's important. And now I'm moving more into functional training, but this is going to, again, you're going to see the parallel between why functional training and using resistance bands can help with that, can accelerate your core strength and stability, can help you with multi-plane movements because we have to move. Our bodies move in different directions, right? You probably hear me say this in some of the follow alongs. I say things like we got to be able to move in different directions, in different planes, right? So there's 3 different main planes movements, planes of movement. There's the sagittal plane, which is moving forward and back. So most of us in all of our exercises, workouts, etc., are used to going forward and back, right? Lunging, just more forward and backward movements, walking on a daily basis. Then there's the frontal plane, which is side to side movements, which, in general, we don't generally do a lot of side to side movements. Right. That's why in a lot of the workouts we do side lunges, we do meet the queens, we do skater hops, we do side to side jumping burpees. It's more the functional training that come out with you're doing side to side jumps, right? Moving side to side. We need more of that. And then transverse, rotational movements. A lot of us twist, but it's more rotation. These are crucial for functional strength because that actually mirrors more of our real life activities. In real life, like we don't train. A lot of people don't train with side to side movements as much as they do front and back, right? Or in the sagittal plane, right? Most people just train sagittal, some transverse, maybe some frontal, but not as much as we do when we're out and about throughout the day. So again, training this will enhance our flexibility, coordination, specifically our coordination. right? And then multi-joint movements. That's another thing, right? Multi-joint exercises. So you see that a multi-joint exercise is an exercise that uses more than one joint or muscle group simultaneously, like a squat, right? Knees, hips, push-ups, elbows, shoulders. When I first went to Thailand in 2009, 2009, I just got my certification as a strength and conditioning coach for MMA because that's really what I wanted to do. So I'd learned already how to train strength and conditioning for fighters. And when I went to Thailand and I went to Tiger Muay Thai for the first time, that was a place in Thailand, in Phuket, where fighters from all over the world, all these different MMA fighters from all over the world would go to Thailand for their stand-up, for their striking, right? For Muay Thai striking. Because then you would see for Jiu-Jitsu, you would have people go to Brazil, right? I'm going to Brazil for a month to train Jiu-Jitsu because that's Brazil's sport. People would go to US or Russia for wrestling because those are the two best countries at the time for wrestling. So that's where you would go. People would go to Cuba for boxing. And people would go to, and I'm being dead serious when I say, and people would go to the Netherlands for kickboxing, like for a different type of kickboxing, because Muay Thai is different than kickboxing, right? And then people would go to Thailand for Muay Thai. So when I got there, there was all these fighters, all of these beast fighters from all over the world there at Tiger just for their Muay Thai. And in the gym, they were doing single joint movements. So I would see guys doing bicep curls, kickbacks, and it was like infuriating me. Like it would be, I would see guys sitting on the thing doing leg extensions, right? And I'd be like, what the? So I would get not pissed, but I would be like, hey guys, like like you're a fighter who has to move in all of these different planes of movement, right? You have to use multi joints whenever you're doing something specific, right? You're never going to be doing a bicep curl in a MMA fight. That's not happening. You may have to hold somebody in a position, right? So there's that isometric hold, but you're not like doing this. And because you have to train all of these different like skills, right? You got to train jiu-jitsu, wrestling, you got to train your stand-up, you got to train MMA, and then you have strength and conditioning, which at that time was like foreign for everybody, right? Because as I mentioned before, these are like world-class fighters who are doing bicep curls. And again, it's not only because they didn't know. So when I started to tell them about the multi-joint movements and strength and conditioning and everything, it made a lot of sense because yes, and for us as regular men at our age, we're also not just doing bicep curl movements anymore, right? We're not, these are the show movements, right? Bicep curls, isolation joints, like isolating a specific joint movement like bicep curls. Yes, of course, we have them in our programming, but we want to move more. We want to have multi-joint movements, right? There's a time and place for that stuff, but for us, we want the best bang for our buck, right? Overall strength comes from multi-joint movements. Enhancing muscle coordination comes from multi-joint movements. Increasing your functional fitness comes from multi-joint movements. Plus, they're time efficient, right? You do a 20-minute workout with multi-joint movements, you're gonna hit and stimulate more muscles during that workout than you would just doing biceps and tris, right? So we gotta do more multi-joint movements, which is why functional training is great. Also counterbalance. This is huge for us. Okay, got a great story for this. Counterbalancing refers to our ability to maintain balance when and it just distributing our weight evenly, our weight and our force evenly. Okay, and this is so important. When you have to shift your weight from one side to another, doing whatever. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. 3 weeks ago, I was at a conference, and I was with we were with a bunch of guys, and this guy and I were walking to the actual conference, and I tried to trip him, right? I stuck my, because we're having fun, we're like little kids, we're guys, right? So I tried to trip him, and then I will. So I tried to trip him, and because he does capoeira, like he's high level capoeira, I couldn't trip him. Like I tried to trip him because we were going down a little bit of an embankment. So I thought, oh, this is the perfect time to trip this guy. So I tripped him, and he was, his balance was insane. Like he just went, put it up, got up, and just didn't fall. Was able to shift that balance. Why? Because he does capoeira. So that makes total sense. Fast forward, we're walking to another talk, and he tries to trip me. Same thing, a different place, because this place we were at was at a golf course. So he tried to trip me, and same thing. Like I was able to balance. In fact, I jumped a little bit and then landed, and I was okay. I was able to shift. And that's where our counterbalance comes, right? Like that's only there because of the type of training, right? Because we lose that. So for instance, the other thing too is like I'm Uncle Funk to all of these, like to a lot of the kids in this area, right? Because we have a ton of kids here, right? And so the parents will go out to we have a little bit of a place here where all the kids play. Like at 4:30, this place there's kids all over the place, running around, jumping up and down. And whenever they see funk, they gotta hit. They know they gotta hit the ground and do push-ups and burpees. Like that's like there'll be 15 kids out there. There's funk, push-ups. Oh, we gotta do push-ups, gotta do burpees. But then, sometimes we have fun. We run around and stuff and what have you. And when you're running around trying to chase kids, right, and you're trying to outdo kids, deke them, whatever. That's like what we're doing with our grandchildren. Right? That's what our grandchildren want grandpa to do. Grandpa Robert, Grandpa Tony, Grandpa Jeff, Grandpa Tinius. Like we need to be able to counterbalance ourselves. And we lose that shifting our weight without like, oh, my back. Or like I remember one of the mothers, like, I can't believe you're running around with these kids in slippers, because I had these like slip-on slippers because I wasn't expecting to go running. I put garbage into the garbage thing across the street, and then someone said, "There's funk," and then all of a sudden kids are doing push-ups and burpees, and then I get there. Now they're having this water balloon fight, and I'm having to run away from all these kids who want to destroy me with water balloons. So she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're running around like this in freaking slippers," right? But we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to, maybe not in slippers, but be able to have fun with our kids, with our grandkids mostly, right? It's very important for us to be able to counterbalance ourselves, enhance stability, prevent falls, to just maintain independence, right? Reduce the fall risk. If we're going hiking, like if you're coming to the over 40 alpha camp and retreat, we're hiking, man. We're doing some serious rucks, some serious hikes, and we're going to need to be able to jump from rock to rock. Like whenever Angela and I go hiking out in the middle of, wherever, if it's in the Rockies, if it's in Utah, if it's in Big Bend, Texas, wherever it is, you got to jump from rock to rock or climb up something or whatever. We're not rock climbers, but we still need to be able to have that balance, right? And not feel like we're weak. But that comes with training. That doesn't just come. We got to train that. Like, single limb stuff we have to do. So unilateral training. One of the phases in my new Alpha Warrior program is unilateral training. In fact, I'm shooting those right now. If you are in my over 40 muscle academy and you're doing MMA 365, unilateral training. If you're in the over 40 Alpha Brotherhood, unilateral training. Unilateral training is so important. That's single limb training, like either one side of the body or single leg squats or single arm presses. It's so important for addressing imbalances, right? It's so important for coordination, for overall strength, right? And it helps us to identify and correct weaknesses that we have, right? So all of these things, like that's why just going on YouTube and doing random workouts don't work. You need a program. You need proper programming that has a lot of this stuff implemented, and also integrated movements, right? Combining different types of movements or muscle groups in one exercise. What are one of my favorite types of workouts? Combo movements. I love combo movements. Literally. I mean, I think I I don't want to say revolutionize, but there was no one when I first started doing combo movements. Like, you guys know, and you guys have benefited from this because you guys have been in my brotherhood, you've been in my programming. So for you guys, it's probably like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, I know how to do reverse lunge and curls, or, in MM365, there's a combo movement phase, and a lot of my stuff there's combo movements and phases, and there's one coming up in the resistance band training. But again, integrating movements enhance our overall functional training, our overall body's function, to be able to move the body in one cohesive unit, right? Being able to have coordination to do a reverse lunge, curl, press, back, up to a lunge, like combo movements. Kettlebell training has a lot of combo movements. So all of that, like, if you think about just going onto YouTube, not saying you guys do this, but the reasoning why following, and here I go, I'm gonna what's the word I'm looking for? I'm gonna have a little bit of a thing right now. You know the word I'm looking for, but that's why when you follow again, I'm not dissing any person in this fitness industry, because at the end, fitness people want to, I believe most of them want to help people. They're not helping people, but most people do. So I'm not dissing fitness people, okay? So just don't think I got to hate for them, because I don't. In fact, it's the opposite. But the reason why we don't follow just influencers who have 1 million followers but don't really have the programming knowledge to understand how to program something properly, and just following random freaking people who, when you see they're doing one movement or they're stacking all of these exercises because they think it's cool, but they may have this regular personal training certification, but they don't have the programming. That's a big difference. I was blessed to have programming design expertise from Nick Tuminello from 12, 13 years ago, right? Program design was like the one thing I said, I want to master this. And I mastered program design. But when you start just following random even on my YouTube, like, you would never just go to my YouTube channel and just start using those YouTube workouts thinking that you're going to get the greatest results. If you haven't done anything before and you use those workouts, of course, at the beginning you are, but I didn't put those on YouTube as a program. I'm just giving you a taste of what type of workouts and programming that you would get when you join the Funkosphere. So when you don't have things that address core stability, when you don't, and your trunk, when you don't have workouts that are multi-plane movements, multi-joint movements that counterbalance and help you with explosiveness and balance and distributing weight and force evenly, when you don't have single limb training, unilateral training, when you don't have all these integrated movement patterns after you've mastered that, then you don't have proper programming, specifically for us guys our age. Because when you think about it, all of those things that I just talked about, imagine now if you tomorrow went, oh yeah, I'm going to do this bodybuilding workout program where I do bis and tris one day, I do back one day, then I do legs, then I do chest and shoulders, and then I go back and do bis and tris. Like, no core training, no multi-plane movements, no multi-joint exercises, barely. You're not doing any counterbalancing, probably barely any single limb training, and you're definitely not combining movements. And so putting yourself in such a small little box, when for us, we need a larger box that's going to give us more bang for our buck, because we have a lot more things that a lot more challenges physically that we have to address. Functional style training is the best way to go. Or ensuring that you have a program that's specifically set up in a way that will address all of the things we just talked about. So making sure that we have these things, multi-plane functionality, the ability to to land and jump and stabilize our body when gravity is pulling us down and when we want to explode up or move side to side. Those are things that are not just for young guys. Like this is not young person training. In fact, this is old guy training. This is how we need to train. Now, are we going to be training like UFC fighters? No. But are we going to be doing the exact same workouts, but at a different pace or a different resistance or a different tempo? 100%. So where does band training come into all of this? How can we implement and use band training to ensure that we are getting the best bang for our buck, right? Well, we talked about this. It's not just another piece of equipment. It allows us to do so much. It allows us to be explosive. It allows us to use single limb. It allows us to move from side to side. I've got an exercise in one of the workouts where it's a step out squat, right? So you're stepping out against the bands. I have exercise where we're doing jacks, like jumping jacks, but they're not actual jumping jacks. They're just jacks. They're called band jacks. Where now I may actually have that in one of my other programs, but anyway, you're pushing against the band. So now there's that adductor, abductor. There's a little bit of explosiveness, a little bit of plyometric training, all with just doing jumping jacks or a variation of jacks with bands. So we're getting a lot of it. We're getting multi-plane movement patterns, as I mentioned. We're getting combo movement patterns. So bands are very practical. It's a practical application that you can take anywhere, right? We can do band training that are attachment free, which are a lot of my band workouts, because I don't want there to be barriers for you to learn how to use bands. But then there are band attachment exercises, which again are in my Alpha Warrior programming, the academy. We have now, I teach you guys how to attach bands to, for me, I'm just attaching it to my lattice work here, right? But when you add band attachment exercises, the exercise versatility just, I mean, it explodes with the different variations of one exercise that you can do with bands attached and without, and get incredible results with those variations. It's amazing. But you can take it to the gym. You can take them outside. You can go to the park and put and attach them to a pole, to a post. You can take them on vacation. I mean, if you ever go on vacation, you're taking both of these. You're taking both of these on vacation. I mean, these were game changers for Angela and I when we were in Abu Dhabi during COVID, and we were there for a whole month with the UFC. And we brought the bands, and the bands helped. When I was in Mexico, the bands were huge, because I could just train up right on my veranda there. It was amazing. So traveling, just bring them to the gym. So you're not using the bands at the gym, you're using your own bands, right? Again, the range of exercises that band training allows for, right? And it's not just about building muscle and strength. Yes, stretching. Like I'm actually going to be shooting someone posted something about their hamstrings being tight since doing the MM365 programming, because what they probably didn't realize is when you're training with my metabolic muscle 365, your legs, you're going to build like, you're going to become Quadzilla. Like literally your legs are going to be super strong. We do a lot of lower body leg work, but that comes with making sure that you're not only warming up and stretching, but what are you doing on those recovery days, right? What are you doing with your hamstrings? Because if your hamstrings are tight, that's lower back, that's knee pain, that's hip tightness. There's so many things that come with tight hamstrings. That's increase in literally pulling your hammies walking or accelerating. You have to accelerate in some way, right? And you do not want to pull a hamstring, not at our age, because then you'll be in that 9-volt for sure. No doubt. You'll be on that 9-volt. You don't want to be in the 9-volt, man. So, Yeah, it's just the wide ranges of exercises, the practical application, upper, lower, core, squats, lunge. Yes, we can do bicep curls and shoulder presses because we do, but then we can add something that, like for me, for instance, here's another exercise that, man, there's no way I would be able to do this exercise without bands. Is overhead squats, overhead lunges, like overhead squats and lunges, right? Like that's like a advanced technical movement because most times when people are doing overhead squats and lunges, they're using barbells, kettlebells, and dumbbells. But when you don't have shoulder stability or you have weak core or you don't have the strength to do something like that, when you use bands, specifically the yellow band, now what this does is allows you to get that uh, stability because now you're stepping into a band that allows you to actually hold a position, and now you can start to practice the technique of lowering your body, still keeping that position because you have that band keeping you compact and stable. And now you can do exercises that there's no way in hell, for me anyway, that I would ever been able to do and benefit from just using. I would not even think about using doing overhead squats or overhead lunges. Angela can do, but I can't. Now I can because I have bands. So now the bands are teaching me and strengthening me in that position, right? Getting my more mobile so I can pull my shoulders back and still have stability, right? And then descend into a squat or into a lunge. It's amazing. It's amazing. So again, I'm not, and so then you build up the strength, the technique using the bands, and now you're like, okay, let me try to use and do the same exercise because now I have that strength, right? Now I have that because I'm training my body to move. I'm training my core to be stable. I'm training to connect what are the muscle groups that are being used in this. What do I need to stay stable? And now I can just say, okay, now I feel strong in this. I go from yellow to red. And now I'm like, you know what? Let me try this just without the band. And so now I'm doing it without the band, and I'm able to do it without the band because to tell you the truth, doing that with the band is easier than doing it without the band. It sounds very weird. But again, sometimes the band makes certain exercises easier, right? Like for instance, if you're trying to do squats and you're learning squats and you want assistance, then you use band assisted exercises. And now, if you're getting back into, okay, I had an injury, this is where the rehab stuff comes, but not just rehab stuff, just teaching technique, reteaching technique, mastering technique. Oh, let me get this band, let me attach it somewhere so that now I have this heavier band that can hold 210 pounds or, it can hold 210 pounds in regards to me doing pull-ups, but it can hold a little bit more in regards to like what I'm talking about when we're doing something that's assisted. I need help with this lunge. I need help with this squat. So now I have a band that's going to enable me to have a little bit more assistance, making the exercise easier. But then there's some exercises when you're doing with a band are much more difficult, which is amazing. That's where the versatility comes in, and that's why I love using bands and really love how I've discovered more because I haven't been used bands for years, and I've never used bands at this capacity ever. So improving my flexibility, reducing chances of injury, using them in a practical way. Obviously, the everyday strength that you get with band training through the functional training, lifting, carrying, reaching. Not saying you're doing those exact things with the bands, but that functional strength allows you to do those things with much more precision, much better, with more confidence, right? And again, like band assisted or band resisted squats, right? So squatting with the band, resisting you, right? So for instance, that's why I was talking about the band attachment exercises, right? When you attach the band, right? So one of the things I tell you guys to do in one of the workouts in the Alpha Warrior Academy is this is going to attach to whatever like for me it's the bar or the lattice work for me. Sometimes it's right here on my stairs, right? So that will be attached, and then I attach this right to the band. I don't know if I'll be able to do it like this right now, right? So now this is attached to the band. I just did that. Well, you know what I mean. So and then I wrap this around me, so around the waist, and then I step away from the band to get that resistance, and then do squats, or then do lunges. So now I'm adding resistance while I'm squatting in a different way, right? Sprints, running, stationary sprints, but with resistance. So again, stepping away from the attachment from the core part, from where you attach the band, and now running away from, but in a stationary manner. So leaning a little bit forward allows you to start to train your fast twitch muscles, train that running movement. So you don't have to actually run right off the bat. You can start to train with jogging. Then your jogging becomes a little bit more faster run, and then it becomes that stationary sprint where you're now really focusing on all of that technique with the resistance from the band. It's amazing. Yeah, so the power training, so again, sprinting, jumping with the bands, with the band assisted, the injury prevention. So I talked about, using bands to help with stability, to help with mobility, to help with range of motion, right? So range of motion, yeah, all of those things are reasons why either adding the band, right, to your training, or changing it up. Like seriously, change, like you will learn that, like, oh man, this is like it's a totally different resistance to dumbbells. Completely different. That's like, it's humbling in some ways. There's a lot of exercises that will humble you. And on the flip side, if you've been just using bands for a long time, you have to be very cognizant of, okay, I've just been using bands, but have I been increasing have I been progressively overloading with the bands, or am I just using the same band with the same exercises, but just, different workout using the same exercise and just using the same band and not really stimulating that muscle breakdown, right? The metabolic stress, the mechanical tension, the muscle damage that we need, because it's very easy to get comfortable with bands, but not progressively overload and make things tougher by moving away from the implement, by adjusting the resistance from where you're stepping on the band, by adding attachments, by doubling up bands, by graduating to a bigger band for the same exercises, by moving, so in the Warrior Band Academy, there's a lot of exercises that bands allow us to do, specifically with the bicep curl, for instance. I've talked about this before, but like the bicep curl range of motion, because range of motion is a really big thing when it comes to building muscle. A lot of times with a bicep curl, we're only here, right? We're only here, or maybe only here. So we're only getting a very small range of motion with a bicep curl. But in fact, the bicep curl starts from back here and comes all the way up. I can't even get my elbow up, but it comes all the way up. So that is a full range of motion for a bicep movement. It starts back here and then it comes all the way up here. That's like a range. I know I use my shoulder here, but like it starts here, and then if I was to do the range of motion of a bicep curl comes all the way up. So we usually miss this lower part of the bicep, and we definitely miss this part of the bicep where we can stimulate more bicep, where we can build a much more we can break down and stimulate more of our muscle damage in the biceps, because when you start using and just doing the same Same old bicep curl. Even if you're adding more weight, you're still only hitting a small part of the bicep that's already a small muscle to begin with. So now you're getting the different. You're hitting the biceps and the different, the outer part, the peak, when you are being able to do bicep curls, right? So remember back when you had pulleys back in the day at the gym, if you used to do this in the gym, you would do bicep curls from back here. So the pulley would be down here, and now you're just doing this with a bicep curl from behind, right? Which is why sometimes if you do some of the workouts with my benches, with the bench workouts, you're doing incline bicep curls because it's the same thing. Anyways, it's just, man, it's incredible. So let's just end off with the different types of biceps. I mean, the different types of bands, because not all bands are created equal. Let me repeat this, and I'm being dead serious here, and I'm telling you right now, not all bands are created equal. Okay? Which is why I created these bands. I created these bands because they're the best bands. The latex. So these are flat latex bands. Okay? There's different types of bands. We're going to go through them all. But the flat layer band, latex, that is 41 inch in circumference, right? Because there are also smaller ones as well that you would use for different things. Like there's bands that you would use for, more for mobility work or glute work, right? But you can still use these. You just double them up. But the 41 inch flat elastic bands that are bonded with multi sheets of latex is the best, because the construction, the latex construction of these bands make them extremely strong and less prone to tearing. So I've had these bands, specifically the first family of the bands, for 4 or 5 years, I guess, when I first, I've used those bands specifically now, but even back when I first got them, I used them a lot. I use them in all those warm-ups that we do. So the longevity of these are huge. The process, because of the process, it enhances the durability of these bands, right? And so that's going to withstand heavy, prolonged use over and over again without losing the elasticity and without snapping. Because believe me, I've had all those other shitty bands from before, and they're just horrible. So again, these layered flat bands are, you can use them for a wide range of exercises, right? So you can do every single exercise and then some. Great for stretching, great for strength and muscle, great for explosiveness. They're not going to snap. They're safer. They give you a safer workout experience. They give you a more confident workout experience. Sometimes you don't feel confident when you're kind of pulling other types of bands, and they're cost effective. Like, yes, they're definitely more expensive than your other shitty bands, but the longevity is gonna be much better investment in the long run. Like, it's all about quality, right? You can cheap out on some bands, but imagine if you get shitty bands and you're in the middle of a program and now the bands snap, and now you not only do you not have bands, but you have to stop that program and you have to look and try to find bands or order bands. It's going to take time, and that's going to derail your momentum. So the other bands that I'm talking about, the other shitty bands or bands that aren't good for what we're doing, there's those molded elastic tubes. You remember back in the day when you had those bands with the tubes? And if you have these bands, no disrespect, but just throw them in the garbage, because they're useless. Okay, they're honestly useless because they're less durable. They're prone to snapping, like specifically at the where you have the handle of those, like those are bands that have handles. They're not a circumference flat band. They're like the bands with the two handles. You know those ones? Yeah, they're just made with a single piece of latex, and they're just not made for durability. They're made for cheapness. And listen, back in the day when resistance band training first started, those were the only bands that were really around. So yes, I remember going through a shitload of those bands, right? I even remember promoting someone's bands. I remember way back, later skater, I remember way back when some band company wanted me to promote their band. I'm talking like 10, 15 years ago. And I remember using those bands and they snapped. Oh, I remember using those bands with one of my fighters and he was doing these pulls, right? Like he was doing these. He was doing these with the bands on the side of the cage and they snapped on him. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad. Oh my God. It was Ainsley Robinson, our Canadian wrestling Olympian who I was training for MMA, and they snapped on him. Oh my God. So never again. And then there's the TheraBands, right? Like now TheraBands aren't shitty bands. They're used for therapy and rehab. They're not used for intense strength training. They're not durable. So you'll see a lot of like on social media, you'll see a lot of women who will use the TheraBands as doing like strength training, or if that's what they call it. But like you'll see women using the very, very thin, flat, long TheraBands, and they'll be doing like bicep curls, and they'll be doing like tricep extensions. If you are a lady listening to this, do not use those for that. Those have a role. The role is therapy and rehab, not strength training, right? Get the right implement, the right equipment for the right thing that you're trying to do, right? Like you're not going to use um, a medicine ball to do bench press, right? Like that's you know what I mean? Like you're not going to get a medicine ball. Could you do presses with a medicine ball? Yes, but if you're trying to build like strength, right? Because that's what a bench press is, for strength. It's not for chest size. It's for just literally, it's a strength exercise. So you're not going to use the medicine ball to get upper body strength from what you would get with a barbell bench press, right? Technical strength, like, so same thing. And then there's the molded flat bands that have just a single layer. Okay, so they may look like this, but they have a single layer, and those ones are definitely susceptible to wear, tear over time. So you want to invest in the right type of band. You want to invest in the 41-inch band, right? So 41-inch, specifically for this. I mean, it's great to have a different, maybe it's great to have a small one for like a dynamic band for, if you're doing specific types of squats, right? Where you put these above your knee and, you're doing squats pushing out on the bands. Definitely going to have that in one of my workouts. If you are doing, we used to have a prehab program. I have a prehab program where activation. So that's really, those type of bands are really great for activation, glute activation, adductors and abductor activation before your workouts. You see people doing duck walks with a smaller band. Great. But these are the 41-inch band that we use for programming, strength training, that sort of thing. And you can, and the great thing is you can use these because they're versatile. You just double them up, make them smaller. A 41-inch, suitable for all different types of exercises. Of course, you want different sizes so that you can use some for attachments, some for, assisting. Specifically, if you want to learn how to do a pull-up, then you would use this big band here. Right? And you would put this on the pull-up station. You may even go with the green one too, and that will help you learn how to do the eccentric movement with pull-ups, because that's what band assisted pull-ups are actually used for. They're not used to help you do the pull-up. They're used to help you eccentric movement, the movement where you're going down from the top part of your pull-up. That's how you get stronger doing pull-ups. You don't get stronger doing pull-ups using the assisted band by just doing these. You get stronger doing pull-ups going down slowly. And the resistance band helps you to enable yourself to learn how to slowly get to the bottom of the pull-up so that, build the muscles that you will need to be able to pull yourself up. So that's just a little pro tip for you. Yeah, and again, it's just the consistency that you can use, and you can use this for so many things. So in general, that's, the reason why, again, that I wanted to coach on this is it's another piece of equipment that I think for us guys in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s is one of those like key pieces of equipment. The resistance band, the right resistance band, because it's important for functional movement. It's important to build muscle, for strength, for mobility, for stability, for all of those movement patterns and reason, the ability to move in different planes of movements, the ability to do exercises with different angles. I believe and truly believe that every single one of you guys should have a set of bands. The more exercises you start to use with the bands, and again, for not just warm-ups, but just in general, you are going to find yourself getting much stronger when you go back to, or when you start using kettlebells or dumbbells. It's unbelievable in those regards. So remember, here's the other thing too, guys. And again, I'm not putting on my conspiracy hat, or I'm not putting on anything, but what do I always say? Okay, because it's 2024. It's 2024 right now, and I live in Canada, but you guys in the United States of America, and again, we don't talk politics and religion or anything else in this program or in this brotherhood, but the one thing that I can say with 100% certainty is you better be prepared. You better have your home gym prepared. But you got to use bands. You got to have them and learn how to use them, because it's not just about, love it. It's not just about, just having them and they're there. Like when you start learning how to use, which I'm going to 100%, teach you guys, because you're going to learn how to use them. I'm telling you, it's just like, you just feel more empowered. And again, if something happens and things shut down, you know that if you don't have a massive set of dumbbells or you don't have kettlebells, but you know that if you had a set or two sets of bands, you would be fine for years. Literally, they could shut down every gym for 3-4 years and you would be fine with these 6 bands. I'm going to tell you exactly the weights of each of these bands. And the only reason why I'm saying this to you is, listen, one of the things about me is, Jesus, I don't like to just get stuck in one place. Like, I want to learn and continuously learn. I'm always wanting to, and whenever I learn something, I want to give it to you guys, right? I always try to learn things that are going to help us as we get older, right? I could just be dumbbell guy. I could just be bodyweight guy. I could just be kettlebell guy. But I want to ensure that I'm giving all of us the ability to stay as healthy as we can, but also giving us versatility in our training, giving us variation in our training, right? And so I learn more. Like, I haven't used bands to this much. I don't think I've ever used bands this much. Maybe when my first band program. Maybe my first band program. No, actually, no, I haven't. Not this much. Not as much as I have. Not 2 months and continues. Like, I'm going to continue down for another month and a bit. So I'm learning more, and the more I learn, the more you guys learn. And so I'm learning, like, oh my God, the power of bands. Like, no wonder Dave Schmitz have been using bands for the time when I knew, in his 30s. Totally. Now this makes sense to me. Why he's the band man, and why I got certified by him, and why the power of these, specifically as we get older, makes sense. So let me just quickly go through how much weight each band is. Again, now you got to be very careful when I'm talking like this, because it's a different type of resistance. It's not the same resistance, constant resistance, as a dumbbell. It's different. So the weight or resistance level is 5 for the yellow one, which is the smallest one, which is going to be the most versatile band, 100%. You will use this band more than any other band. And that's because the versatility allows you to start with this band in specific exercises so that you can master the exercise. Or, you know me, I'm metabolic training. So sometimes I'm like, let me just start with the yellow band just to make sure. And then I can move up in the next round or the next workout. But this is 5 to 30 pounds. So that's the resistance level of the yellow band, 5 to 30 pounds. Okay. And again, it's a different type of resistance. So it's not the same as like a dumbbell. Now this is 15 to 35 pounds, actually 15 to like 40 pounds, the red one. Okay, so this is a little bit heavier. So you're starting at 15 pounds, which is why I like the yellow one, because it's like, oh, this is like the lowest is 5 pounds. So it's like, that's why I can do way more exercises, specifically shoulder exercises using the yellow. Or there's a lot of specific like tricep exercises, like tricep extensions or tricep kickbacks, where the yellow one now is much better than the red one, right? So the red one's about 15 to 40 pounds, okay? So then we move on to the black one. This one's another great one. This one is about 25 to 65 pounds. Okay, that's the resistance level. So you'll see it's very difficult. The black one, it's great though. And then I call this one the heavy band. This one's like the band you use for like a lot of strength and power exercises. Again, you can use them all for that, but this is like 35 to 85 pounds. So this is a little step up. But again, just the small increment in weight makes a massive difference because of the resistance, the type of resistance. Okay. Now we get to the big boys, the power strength band. This is 50 pounds to 120 pounds. So this is quite a bit. But again, this is a lot different because of the type of resistance it is, right? It's very difficult to move around. And then the Robusto, the big one, the big boy, this is 60 to 150 pounds. But it holds up to 250 pounds. It can support up to 250 pounds. So if you are someone who wants to learn, you're 240 pounds and you need this for support, whether it's a support through, sometimes you can put, if you have a rack, you can put these between the racks and start doing like plyo push-ups with these. Obviously you can do pull-ups with these, assisted pull-ups, a lot of plyos with these. You're not going to use this as much as the other ones, obviously, but still, the 250, the support that you get, and then the 60 to 150 pounds of resistance is huge. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, thank you everybody for being here and being part of this. This is great.